Hey, welcome back to Doodling with Purpose, our week-by-week guide to learning ancient hieroglyphics, so you too can get ready to be a tourist in Egypt as soon as the world opens up again and, we can walk around without masks. Until then, enjoy a picture of people without masks. Okay, today we're going to do a little review about plurals because, as I've noted in a few other lessons, there are multiple ways of doing plurals, but there are some things that unify all plurals, the way you pronounce them. But before we do that, let's look at the homework from last week, as we always do. All right, so have you written this out or glyphed it out on your own and done the transliteration and then the translation? And if you don't know the difference between those, let me know and I can explain. All right, so first we see a negative there, and then we divide up into words that we recognize, and hopefully more and more words are becoming recognizable to you, so it's easier to do this each week. So that first N, the people, person, shrugging, that's going to be didn't or never. It's going to be a negative to the sentence. Now we have the verb ma'a, which is to see, but because the N, shrugging, comes first, we know we are in the past tense, and there's no water sign afterwards, so it becomes saw. Then we have a noun, the king, or a king, since there's no articles in ancient Egyptian. It could be a or the. And then finally, we have a dependent pronoun for we, which could also be us. Again, as noted many times, there are multiple ways to translate words, and you'll only know when you have the whole sentence. So, putting it all together, the king never saw us, or a king didn't see us. You're going to probably use us instead of we here, just because it makes the most sense. You wouldn't say the king never saw we. At least that's not correct in English. So we're going to try to use English as our bearing to understand how hieroglyphics should be spelled out. All right, homework done. Let's dig into a little review, and this is going to be relevant in today's lesson. I want to look back at how different words can be stretched out. So here are 3 words that all start with a triple consonant. The first word is ankh, n, and k. The second word, hatip, t, and p. And the third word, chru and r. All right, so as we've noted many times, if you have single consonants that follow a double or triple sound consonant, you don't repronounce those same sounds. So in the case of that first word, ankh, and then nuh after it, well, the nuh repeats the nuh of ankh, just like the TP of chatip repeats the TP of chatip, and the R repeats the R of hooper. So this is just a way of elongating a word or shortening a word. You could write all of these words with one single triple consonant, or you can write it with a triple consonant followed by multiple single sound consonants. It's simply the Egyptian way of making sure the language was elastic because, well, obviously they needed it to be. So these words mean life, rest, and become, or to become. Add them to your vocabulary and your flashcards or whoever it is you're keeping track of words, because we'll start using them more and more, and we're trying to really build our vocabulary. So, as noted, Egyptians wrote most of their hieroglyphics in stone on walls, and they had to be conscious of how much room they had, which is why the Egyptian language is so elastic. It can be stretched out if there's more space on the rock, or shrunk down if you have less rock to write on. It's not like they had pieces of paper. Well, I guess they had papyrus, but, they couldn't just, have a notebook. It didn't exactly work that way with rocks. That'd be a really heavy notebook. All right, with that in base as a review, let's jump back into plurals. So we've talked about plurals a few times. Here's a word, apid, bird, A-P-D, vulture, pool, hand, apid. All right, so that means one bird. Now, if you want to make this into a plural, there's 2 common ways to do this. One, you could add the chick at the end, which is a W, or you could add 3 strokes, making it a plural object. So adding the W at the end of apid makes it apidu with a W. Now the W is not always pronounced, and anytime it's transliterated, it's in parentheses to show that it's not always pronounced. It's there to remind you it's plural, but you may still call it apid. You don't have to pronounce the W. And then the other way, you could do apid with 3 strokes, but in the transliteration, you're still going to write that W. It's very important. The W, it's kind of like the S in English when you go from, pen to pens. All right, Now let's look at a third way that plurals can be written. So here we have three vultures in a row, which could still be opid. It could still mean birds. And opid with a W at the end, whether you pronounce the W, but you always write it in parentheses. Now, it's most common to have a word that's pluralized with double or triple of the same sign when you have something like lands. With lands, there's distinctly two of them, like the union of Upper and Lower Egypt. So if it's a word that specifically has two of it, like a very common thing, like eyes or arms or legs or lands, that's when you're usually going to see the double sign version of a plural. Not so much with opid, with birds. All right, so let's review. We could have W at the end. We could also have WY, sometimes that's added, still in parentheses. You could have your three strokes, or you could repeat your sign. All different ways of having the plural, but one common thing that in all of them is the W at the end of the transliteration, or the WY, in parentheses. So let's look at an interesting example. So here is the word nefer. The first letter is the three consonant sound nefer, followed by the F and the R, just like we did in the beginning of the lesson, noting that if single consonant sounds follow a triple or double consonant sound, you don't pronounce them. They're just a sign to remind you, to jog your memory of the first sign. So we only pronounce this nefer, not nefer, f-r, like nefer, fur. That's not right. Okay, so nefer, it means beauty. We've dealt with that word before. So it can be written with three signs. It can be written with one sign. Just depends how much rock you have to carve on. And if you need to elongate it because you have more space or shrink it because you have less space, it's just about elastic ability of the language. All right, so what if we triple nefer and we have three nefers in a row? Now, interestingly, we still pronounce this nefer, not nefer, nefer, nefer. But we will add a W. And when you have three of the same sign, and it's a description like beauty, not like lands, like a noun, well, now it's basically the superlative. So you're dealing with the most beautiful, or the most beautiful in the world, or the most perfect. Nefer can also mean perfect, beauty or perfect. So you'll still have the W in the transliteration, but if you have three of the same sign in a row, it's going to be the superlative of the single version, as opposed to a noun like birds or land, where you would have more than one. You can also write the most beautiful with one nefer plus the W bird, but this isn't as common as having all three. Descriptions of adjectives that describe something are usually written with the three. You could also do the strokes, but again, the most common way you're going to get a description word when you want to have the superlative, say it's the most beautiful or the most, the fastest or the tallest, is to have three of the same sign. And again, you're going to continue to use the W in all of your transliteration, whether the W is present in the actual glyphs or not. And it'll always be in a parentheses to show that you don't necessarily pronounce it. It's just present to jog your memory that we're talking about more than one, or we're talking about something that's a superlative, the most of something. All right, so let's go back and review real quick. When you have two of the same sign, or possibly three. It's usually two, though, if it's a noun, not a description. So things like land, or here we have the word au, which is arms. So it's the arm followed by W. So if you have more than one of something, if it's two, if it's a common pairing, you could just see the glyph done twice, like lands there. Or you would just have two of the hand there. I didn't write it out. Then if it's a group of something versus a pair, like you have many birds or many fish, then you're most likely going to have the strokes. And if you have a superlative, you want to say something is the most beautiful or the fastest or the best or the worst, then you're going to have a triple sign. Again, all of these will use W or WY. When is it W? When is it WY? There really isn't a rule. It's kind of all over the map. Just know that it's sometimes pronounced WY, sometimes W, but it's always going to be there in parentheses, and it could appear on the glyph as a bird. All right, here is your homework for this week. And I have used a proper noun that is going to be literal. So there's your little hint there if you're not recognizing some signs. So just sound it out, if you will, and pay attention to your determinatives, and you'll get it. All right, I hope this was a great lesson, and keep watching Doodling with Purpose, and we will keep making them. Leave me any suggestions, comments, or anything that you need to know, and I'll answer them in the comments. Like this video, subscribe. It helps the algorithm. It helps spread fun, free information. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week here on Doodling with Purpose, only on Spectra Creative.